Test operation. What is it? Why does it matter? And where should we apply it? Now, test operation at its core is a basic fundamental program that's designed to be enabled on a VRV system at startup. What does that mean? That means that when the system comes out of the box, brand new with power applied to it, it requires you to run test operation to ensure that the target parameters are set for both in cooling and heating. Now, that doesn't mean that when you put it into test operation that it will run in both of those modes. However, test operation is designed to set those benchmarks on the system for the ramp profiles of both the compressor, where to set valve pulses, all the good stuff, saturation temperatures. So test operation serves a purpose. Now, what does test operation not do, right? What does it not do? It does not look for closed ball valves. Now, it may find the random fan coil in the dark that isn't actually cooling, where there is no coil temperature change. However, if you're assuming that I run a brand new system through test operation, that it's going to magically find all of my problems and tell me where there's issues within the system, I'm sorry to tell you, but it will not. And if that's what you're hanging your hat on, sadly, you're missing the boat. You could have cross piping, you could have ball valves close to fan coils, you could have fan coils that are connected to other systems that are tied to the refrigerant network of that system that test operation will not catch. Now, why is it important to understand what test operation is at its core? Because test operation, although it's a mode that we're required to run on VRV equipment at the beginning of its life cycle, right? It's the very first time it's ever going to run is through test operation. Now you say, what about manual charge mode? Well, manual charge mode doesn't require test operation and can be used before you actually run test operation to add additional refrigerant charge to the system per the installation manual and service manual. However, by using that, right, it's the same with auto charge. If we use auto charge on a system, which is not recommended anymore because, let's be honest, us Americans, we kind of messed that up for our market. We didn't apply it correctly because didn't read the manual to find out what ambient temperatures you can and can't run the system in auto charge. But at the end of an auto charge cycle, something we used to use, something we learned to use on VRV3, would require at the end of that cycle of finishing auto charge to then run test operation a second time if we've already run it before. So test operation is one of those things that's required from the factory, right? It comes off or saying the system has not run test operation directly out of the box and requires us to run that programming sequence on the system before we can run it, start it, and leave it. Okay, what is test operation not supposed to be used for? Now we've covered what it's made for and what its design is, what the design purpose is. What is it not made for? Test operation, and this is for all you technicians out there who may have been told otherwise, especially from tech support, test operation is not to be used as a troubleshooting tool. I will say it again, right, because it's a huge pet peeve of mine. Test operation is not a mode that you use to test the system to tell you what is wrong. If you are there to troubleshoot an error code, if you're there to troubleshoot insufficient cooling or heating or bleed by, whatever it may be, test operation is not a tool in our belt to use for troubleshooting, right? Operating a system and using test operation for that particular goal will only result in heartache. And why? Because if temperature sensors are wrong, if they're misreading, if they're damaged, if expansion valves are damaged, if the charge is off, if someone turned a fan coil off, test operation is going to do what? Putting it in that mode is going to take that little tiny light that you have inside there on the programming board that says, hey, I ran test operation before, and it's going to wipe it clean. So what's that mean? That means that if the system already went through test operation because it had to at the beginning of its life cycle, by turning it on again, you are wiping it clean and saying you've never done it before, so now you need to complete it again. Why is that a problem? Because if your system has an error code and cannot run, and you put it into test operation to tell you what is wrong, it will get stuck with that same exact error code, but now test operation is saying it has not been completed. So you just wipe the slate clean and can't complete test operation, so their system that may have been operational by changing a sensor is now dead in the water. That's why we don't use test operation as a testing tool. It is only used to set parameters on the system when we change and modify refrigerant charge. Well, what do you mean? When I come across a system that has been piped incorrectly, that has the wrong size line set, has the wrong size charge because no one actually measured the line set or piping diameter, shock. When I actually get the correct charge that's supposed to be in the system per the line sizes and also the VRV Express report that I recreate on projects, when I add that correct charge and verify it on that system now, I then verify, this is the step that people skip, verify my temperature thermistors, everything within the system is copacetic and looks good with no error codes, and run it through test operation again. Why is that important? Because if you run a system through test operation with insufficient refrigerant charge or even in an overcharged state, you're gonna find that the way that it sets up its refrigerant saturation temperatures, its charge, its operation, you're gonna find that it is incorrect, right? And what does that result in? That can result in the way that it runs oil return mode is insufficient and not actually getting enough oil back because of the amount of liquid it's sending. You could find that the system is overheating in specific conditions. You'll find that the system makes irregular frequency changes in the compressor that can result in excessive noise. I've seen it on water-cooled systems before. Again, test operation serves a purpose, right? So again, if I'm starting a system, test operation. If I'm modifying the refrigerant charge to ensure that it's accurate and I know that it's different than what was put in during installation, test operation after verifying sensors. If I'm coming across a unit that has an error code, I am not using test operation to find the faults within the system. Again, guys, understanding from a perspective as a technician when to use specific modes and when not to use them is key. And we don't talk about this enough because, again, we're just going to say from the factory perspective, because remember, I lived that life for a while, reference the service manual, reference the installation manual, and they say what to do, but they also don't tell you what not to do. And that's what I'm telling you now, why not to do it and when to do it. And again, by understanding these programming sequences a little bit deeper than what we read in the service manual can help us understand as technicians as to why we shouldn't use it. Yes, that makes sense. Why would I want to cripple your system when you've got a U4 error code by running it in test operation? I wouldn't, and I shouldn't, right? Again, we need to stop relying on tech support to tell us what to do and how to do it. Again, they have great information at times, but if it's someone without experience telling you to do something that you don't understand why, it's our jobs as technicians to dive a little bit deeper, speak to those in the trade who have experience with this equipment, who understand when to do things and when not to do things, as well as the pitfalls. Again, I learned this lesson the hard way by actually using test operation when I shouldn't have, and it bit me in the butt every single time. Now, there is a way to bypass test operation, but I'm not going to cover that in this video because, again, if you're going that route and you're actually bypassing test operation and not actually getting to the root cause of why it needs to be run through test operation, or if you're trying to bypass test operations for the wrong reasons, there's a reason we don't give out that information as to how to bypass it and when to bypass it. Again, 9 times out of 10, you should just be running it if you're changing the board, because remember, new boards require you to run it as well. But also, just don't push the button and hold the test button for 5 seconds if the system doesn't need it, right? There's 2 conditions where it needs it. That's brand new installation and also modifying my refrigerant charge because it's different than the charge that was put in it during installation. And because of those differences, I want to run it now with the understanding of, hey, this is the correct charge, reset your parameters, reset how your ramp schedule is for the compressor, as well as saturation temperature targets, and how you perform. It serves a purpose. It is not a catch-all. It is not perfect, right? You still need to, as a technician, verify all of your indoor units, verify them in both modes, as well as parallel operation. You cannot account for the system being smart enough to find all the problems. It's our jobs as technicians to go through them with a fine-tooth comb and understand what we're looking for and why. We're just not there yet, guys. And I hate to say it, but again, it requires us to be diligent, to actually focus and go through it with a fine-tooth comb, to sign off on it, to say, hey, I'm Roman, right? I went through this system, it's good to go. Otherwise, I might have a failure, and guess what? That failure is on me because I didn't actually go through it with a fine-tooth comb and do my due diligence. Again, guys, don't use test operation as a testing procedure. It's only used for startup and also in modifying refrigerant charge. Don't put yourself in a bind. All right, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.